What's up everyone? So today I am filming, well, I'm starting to film a cook with me video, which means that I take a book and it inspires me to cook. And this is what I'll be reading because of the fact that there are recipes in the back. So I'm gonna start reading Before I Let Go, and I hear that I think like the characters own a restaurant, but then when I was flipping through this book, I noticed that yes, there are recipes in the back. So I am going to read and cook my way through this book. I don't know if I'm gonna do all the recipes or if I'm just gonna pick one. I have done this series before. I call it like Bookish Inspired Cooking, and I can put the playlist down below and above. I believe this might be my third video that I've done of this. The first one, I read Gordon Ramsay's memoir and I made beef Wellington. The second one, I read a thriller and I made a chocolate cake. So I'm interested to see what I'm gonna make for this book. Now, I believe that this is an emotional romance. I think it is about a married couple that falls apart and they have to co-parent. I've heard it's pretty emotional, really sad. A lot of people have been raving about it recently, and we decided to buddy read it in my Patreon, so it's also a buddy read, and everyone seems to be liking it so far in the buddy read. I'm actually doing reading sprints right now with my patrons, but I had to start this intro, and I am actually going to jump into this book and see how I like it. So I'm going to start reading and I will update you guys, especially if there's any like food or stuff, and then we'll decide what recipe we're gonna be making, and you'll get to watch me bake or cook or whatever I'm gonna be doing. Hello, today is Monday, so it's the next day. I am upstairs because I'm working on card orders. I make like TBR cards and stuff like that for people's games. I have an Etsy shop if you didn't know. Yesterday I ended up reading some of Before I Let Go, and already this morning I had started listening to it as well while I was cutting these card orders. So I am officially 22% into Before I Let Go, and I am really enjoying it. It is definitely a like super emotional romance, but it's not a romance in that you think like, oh yeah, we're gonna read about like two characters getting together. It is about Yasmin and Josiah, who had been married for a large span of time because they have like two teenager-ish kids. I guess one's like a teenager and one is like younger than that. They have been divorced the last 2 years, and we know that something detrimental kind of happened in order to kind of trigger that divorce. And in the beginning of this book, like there's an author's note before you even start that has all of the trigger warnings that are in this book, and stillbirth is mentioned, and they have kind of just dabbled into mentioning the stillbirth as I guess one of the things that kind of caused their marriage to be rocky, which that has given me such crazy goosebumps like reading it, even though they haven't really gotten to like a main like topic or story time about it of like, oh, this is what happened and like this is why we're divorced. They will like, the characters will mention it in passing by. So like Josiah, the ex-husband, like mentioned just how hard it was for Yasmin to have gone like through that stillbirth and still have to deliver the baby. So like things like that, like I literally have goosebumps right now just like talking about it, because those kinds of things make me like so emotional. Not only because I am currently pregnant, but also because I've had my own miscarriage. I struggled with infertility for 7 years. There's just a lot of emotions and feelings and stuff that go into me reading books about these things, but I do enjoy like those types of things. Don't trigger me enough that I can't read books about this. I actually do enjoy reading books like this just because I kind of like the awareness brought to it. But I will say this is not like a lighthearted read, even though I am doing it as like a bookish inspired cooking video. It is not a lighthearted romance. Part of this book seems to also be highlighting the struggles of what it might be like to have like an ex-husband or wife that you're kind of closely involved with in other ways. For instance, Yasmin and Josiah own a restaurant called Grits. It's like a southern soul food restaurant. I think they also have a food truck that that they take places with the same name as grits, and they've mentioned having ribs and a bunch of other like really yummy foods. I love the food talk in this book. I love any time books have talk about food or cooking, and I'm really excited to like actually pick a recipe to make later on after I'm done reading this, because I also enjoy that. I feel like I'll be kind of more immersed into the book because we'll be making a recipe that they talked about within the book, and I'll be like, okay, yeah. With Yasmin and Josiah owning this restaurant, still are like business partners together. They obviously are still co-parenting together with their 2 kids, and we see that Josiah is starting to move on a little bit. I mean, it's been 2 years since their divorce, so he's moving on with one of the, I think it's a new chef that's at the restaurant that he's kind of starting to date. So when we are reading from Yasmin's perspective, I feel like it would be so hard for, hopefully I never get divorced. I would never want to get divorced, but if that were to happen, it would be so hard to have kids, and I know that a lot of you probably have gone through this, but to have kids and have to co-parent and to see your ex-husband and your kids kind of, you know, having this other life with this other person. I feel like my jealousy would just be, even if I like didn't love that person anymore, I feel like it's just so hard to see, you know, your life, your family kind of starting with another person. So I really feel for Yasmin, even though obviously I think she's the one that asked for the divorce. You shouldn't be like that, but just saying you shouldn't be like that isn't actually how it's gonna be. Like, you're going to have those feelings, and it's gonna be hard to see, you know, your ex-husband move on. But that's where I am so far in the story, and I'm going to continue listening while I'm doing cards and stuff, and we'll just see like how far we get today, and I'll just update you guys on any more like thoughts that I have regarding the book, and then I'm excited for when we actually cook later. Okay, so I am currently in my baby's nursery. I love coming in here to sit, and the glider is really, really comfortable. So I am sitting and like punching the corners of all my cards. It is 2:15 in the afternoon, and I think I just got to like 54% of the book before I let go. Right now, it is Thanksgiving in the book, and a bunch of the family members got together for Thanksgiving, so they're talking obviously about like a lot of Thanksgiving food and stuff. They had actually lost the aunt in the family back also during the time that they had the stillborn baby, and her name was Aunt Bird or Birdie. And this aunt was like really, really great at cooking, and a lot of the recipes that they had kind of used or transformed for the restaurant grits kind of came and adapted from this Aunt Bird. During this Thanksgiving kind of scene in the book, they are eating this stuffing, and the husband, Josiah, or ex-husband, he was like, oh my gosh, like this stuffing tastes just like Aunt Bird's stuffing. And come to find out that his ex-wife, Yasmin, had made Aunt Bird's recipe. She actually found like her recipe book. There were recipes in there that they hadn't used for the grits restaurant, so it was kind of like them reminiscing on this, and also just how when someone passes away that like makes that kind of food, it's almost like you can never really taste their cooking ever again. Whereas like, you know, if you have like an outfit from them, like that is the same outfit that they've made. But they're just talking about how great it is that they actually have those recipes from their Aunt Bird, so that way they can try and replicate like those same flavors and everything going on. So I actually think, from when I looked in the book, I think that a few of the recipes in the back of the book did say Aunt Bird's recipe of whatever it was. I don't have the book up here with me, but I definitely want to make one of the recipes that was specifically from this Aunt Bird, because I feel like that would be just really cool to see and make for this book, since it kind of has an important meaning to it. I also will say that like so much of this book, just I was like almost in tears earlier, because in one of the chapters they actually went back and kind of talked about not the exact story of the stillbirth, but kind of the aftermath of it and how Yasmin felt just like as a mother, and you know, she wanted to get pregnant again, kind of to replace that baby that she lost, because there's just so much that goes into, you know, actually losing a child. And it showed like how her and her husband at the time just like weren't really on the same page for that. Like, it really made me upset seeing that, you know, the husband doesn't really know how to support his wife during that time, or he doesn't really understand, like he doesn't understand just the significance of loss on like a mother's part. Not saying that all men can't understand that, but particularly this book, it was like so heartbreaking just reading about that and reading about like their fights with all of that. It was just like, this book is so emotional, and it's very good. Okay, let's look at the back. I'm not finished with this book yet. I think I'm past the 50% mark actually. Oh wow, yeah. I'm 70% into this book. But I am probably going to the store tomorrow. So I figured, why not, let's just look at the recipes in the back, so that way I know if I need to grab something at the store, because I'm actually headed very soon to go grab a coffee with a friend in town. So I'm not sure if I'm going to like get a bunch of reading done today with this book. So I'll probably have to finish it tomorrow and then cook tomorrow. But let's go in the back and see what recipes we have here. We have Aunt Bird's limoncello pound cake. Sounds so good. Then we have Josiah's sweet potato pie pancakes. I don't know if I want to do that though, because we just had pancakes the other day. Then we have Aunt Evelyn's corn pudding. Oh, Alvin loves corn. That sounds really good. Okay, eggs, vanilla extract, milk, butter, flour, sugar, cream style corn, whole corn. Interesting, okay. Then we have Soledad's vinaigrette. That looks really good, but that's just kind of normal. Okay, that's it. So I actually think I might want to do this corn pudding. I think that that sounds really good, and I don't know if I've ever had just like corn pudding before. Okay, so I just finished before I let go, and I'll tell you my thoughts, but I actually need to make dinner because it's like 5:51 p.m. and Alvin will probably be home around like 7 or so. So I did decide I'm gonna make Aunt Evelyn's corn pudding. And today when I was at Aldi, I picked up cream style corn in a can, and I have a bag of frozen corn. So I just preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and it said that we're gonna use a 9x13 baking pan. I don't really have a regular 9x13, so I'm using this size. In a bowl, we're gonna beat the eggs, vanilla, milk, and melted butter. So 3 eggs, a 1/3 cup of milk, a 1/4 stick melted butter. I'm going to melt this first, and we're gonna do our teaspoon of vanilla, 3 eggs, all right, I'm gonna whisk this first, and then we'll add the milk. Then a 1/3 cup milk. All right, and then we're gonna add the rest of the ingredients. So we have 2 tablespoons of flour. 2 tablespoons flour, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/2 cup of sugar. Okay, then we're going to do our creamed corn. Let me stir this in. 2 cans of cream style corn. And our bag of frozen corn. All right, so this is what we're looking like. And we're going to dump it into here, and we're gonna bake it, I think for 45 minutes it says. So into the oven it's going to go. I might have filled it up too much, oh well. Okay, I took a shower because the corn pudding is still in the oven, and For dinner, we're having some rice that I made in the Instant Pot and some steak that is like slowly simmering in broth and some spices, and then you add like sour cream at the end and you like put that over the rice and stuff. I didn't really have this planned for together. It was just the meal that I had for tonight, and I am like out of grocery money in my little grocery fund. So we're just eating what was planned. I mean, I think it's gonna be like pretty good together with the corn pudding. The house smells amazing, and I checked on the corn pudding and it is looking very good. So I'm excited to try that. But let's talk about before I let go, so I can give you my thoughts now that I finished the book, and then once I eat the corn pudding, I can give you my thoughts on that recipe. So I believe I'm going to rate this 4 stars because I did really enjoy a lot of the parts and the depth and emotion that this book like brought to the table. I absolutely love romance books that focus on marriages, but also like problems that can arise in marriages, or in this instance, a marriage that became a divorce. This is also really great because it talks about co-parenting, because they have 2 middle school, high school aged children. And you know, you don't see that very often in books. When like a romance is involved, a lot of times they're either not married, they're like young 20-year-olds, or even if they are a little bit older, they don't really have kids yet. So it's really nice to have that dynamic in this book. This story is about a husband named Josiah and a wife named Yasmin, and they were married, I think, for a really long time. I mean, I think their daughter is 14, but from the perspective that we're reading from, they have been divorced for 2 years because of really big traumatic things that happened to them. It is mentioned with trigger warnings and stuff in the beginning that stillbirth is mentioned, but this book really does talk about depression. It talks about therapy and how important therapy is. You kind of see the husband and wife, or ex-husband and wife, you know, fighting with themselves about, number one, with their marriage falling apart, doing what's best for the children, but then also like moving on and seeing the other person move on, and how challenging and hard that can be, especially if you, like with this case, they had a really good marriage to start out with. And I think that's why I really enjoyed this book, is because it really brings out emotions in myself with my husband and myself. We've been married for 7.5 years, and we have a really, really, really great relationship. We have never really had to struggle or like work hard towards it. You know, you hear there's some marriages that like you have to work hard for. We have never had to do that, but we also haven't really had something as traumatic as stillbirth. I have gone through a miscarriage, and we've had infertility for 7 years, but after going through IVF twice, I am pregnant currently. I'm actually almost 8 months pregnant. So I wouldn't really say that those issues are as strong as what the characters in this book went through. So I don't want to downplay like saying that, you know, their marriage fell apart, but mine hasn't. But what I'm saying is that like, it is hard to see. There is a couple that does have a really strong marriage, and it's this thing that you never thought that you would have to go through, or you never thought that, you know, you would struggle through something like that, that kind of breaks your marriage apart. And so I really enjoyed that in this book, because there was no way that this couple knew that they were going to have to deal with a stillbirth. They had no clue like how much that could put them into a depression, how hard it would be to get out of that. Just all of the stuff that is, you know, within that problem. So I thought that it was done really well with that. The reason that I'm not rating it 5 stars is because this is a romance book, and there are a lot of sex scenes in it still, even with all the emotion. I am not a super lover of like the smutty scenes, you know, and I was actually kind of surprised how many there were in here, because of like the topic of this book. You know, you wouldn't think that it would be like, you know, a lot of emotion and then a lot of sex. I know that that's just kind of like my pet peeve. I think that the book was a little long, probably because of the sex scenes. I feel like if you would have just cut those out, I would have liked the book enough to give it 5 stars because it would have been a little bit more fast paced and we would have had like all of these emotions building up. But I found myself like my emotions would build up with, you know, something that I was really enjoying of the book, but then there was like a sex scene and I was like, okay, well now I'm not sad anymore. So I think that's just like a me problem. I did love that the characters in this book owned a restaurant. I love when there's like food and topics like that in a book, so I really enjoyed that. I loved being able to see like how food was so important to their family and like with different aspects, like with their aunt and their grandma and stuff like that. I thought that was done really, really well. I think that if you like the more emotional romances and you want, you know, those heavier topics, I think that you would really enjoy this. I think a lot of people would. All right, I just pulled it out. We got just a little bit of jiggle there, but it looks like it's fully cooked. But I think it has to sit here for 15 minutes to kind of like set up, if that makes sense. This is my steak that I'm cooking, and the rice I will press in the Instapot once Alvin says he's coming home. Okay, we're gonna try some of this. All right, here's a close-up of what it looks like. It looks really good. Alvin just got home. He's taking a shower and he said, ooh, I'm definitely gonna like that. I'm gonna try it here on camera because then when Alvin's done with his shower, we're gonna actually like eat the rest of the stuff. All right. It looks super hot still. It is so good. It is super creamy and buttery. I don't think I've ever had corn pudding before. Like I've definitely had creamed corn. And in Pennsylvania, we have something called dried corn, which is like creamed corn, but dried. But this is so good. You can definitely see this being served at Grits, the restaurant in the book. All right, I'm about to eat like this whole plate. I've already eaten like half of it. But thank you for watching this video and watching me cook this recipe from the book. I had a blast. I can't wait to do the next book, and I will see you in another video soon. Bye everyone.
About to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really